The air over the Mara River tastes of silt and panic. You are standing on the bank before you realize you have stopped breathing, watching the far shore where the grass is trampled flat and the mud is churned into a brown soup. 1.5 million animals are coming. 3,000 crocodiles are already here, waiting beneath the surface. The math is simple. The outcome is not. Forget the postcards you have seen. The golden light documentaries where the wildebeest leap like dancers and the river sparkles with life. That is not this place. This place is a kill site that moves, a crime scene that reloads itself every season, and the evidence is written in blood-oxidized water and broken bone. The first body does not even make it to the water. It stumbles on the bank, pushed from behind by a tide of muscle and terror, and the crack of its leg is a sound you will carry for days. Now look closer, because the river is not the only predator here, and the crocodiles are not the only ones keeping count. You came here expecting a slaughter. What you are about to find is a system so precise, so coldly engineered, that the slaughter is just the opening note. The real killer works in silence, and it does not wait in the water. Let us begin with the crime scene itself. The Serengeti Masai Mara ecosystem is a loop of grass and thirst, roughly 1,000 kilometers around, a circuit that the largest overland migration on Earth has followed for longer than memory. The wildebeest lead, nearly 1.5 million of them, with 250,000 zebra and a long tail of gazelle strung out behind. They move for one reason only: fresh grass. The rain falls in a band across the plains, and the herds chase it in a circle that never quite ends, a wheel of hooves and hunger turning beneath the sun. The Mara River cuts across this wheel like a wound. It is not the widest river on the savannah, not the deepest, but it sits at the hinge of the entire journey. Cross it and the grass ahead is green, the season is won. Stay on this side and the plains go brittle, the herds thin, the calves weaken. So they cross. Not all at once, as the postcards suggest, but in pulses, small groups that gather on the bank and stare at the water for hours, testing it, fearing it, driven by a need that overrides their terror. Those pulses are the moment the investigation begins, because every pulse is a pattern, and every pattern has a story written beneath the surface. The cameras catch the spectacle from above, the brown river of bodies pouring into the channel. But you are not watching from above. You are on the bank, where the story is different, where the scent of ammonia and oxidized blood is already curling into your throat. Watch a single group, 100 strong, as it hesitates at the edge. The leaders stretch their necks, sniff the air, paw the mud. A calf presses against its mother's flank, and the whole mass shivers with a tension you can almost hear. Then something snaps. A single animal plunges in, then another, then the whole front rank commits, and the water explodes into chaos. The crocodiles do not even surface at first. They simply rise from below, jaws open, and take their first victim in silence. The body barely struggles. The water closes over it, and the herd surges past. And for a moment, you think the river has spared them. Then the red blooms on the surface, and you understand that the river does not spare. It only delays. Now let us open the files, because this is not one crime. It is thousands, running simultaneously, and each one leaves a trace. The first witness is the bank itself. Look at the mud where the herds have passed, the deep plunging tracks of the wildebeest, the smaller, sharper slots of the zebra, the shallow drag marks where a body was pulled toward the water. Every mark is a statement. Every statement contradicts the next. Here is the detail nobody expects. Most of the animals that die at the Mara do not die from the crocodiles. They die from the crush. The herd is the killer, a wall of muscle and momentum that pushes the weak into the water, that tramples the fallen, that turns a stumble into a death sentence before any tooth touches flesh. The zebra, you will notice, cross differently. They are sharper than the wildebeest, more alert, more likely to hang back and read the water before committing. The wildebeest, by contrast, commit with a reckless faith that borders on madness. They follow the animal ahead of them, no matter what that animal is running from. That following instinct is what kills them. In the crush, a wildebeest cannot see the river. It only sees the rump of the animal in front, and it goes where the rump goes, straight into the deep channel, into the current, into the waiting jaws. That following instinct transforms the herd into a weapon. More animals die from the crush than from the crocodiles. Subscribe now because the next file in this investigation will reconstruct how a body ends up with a broken leg and no bite marks. The evidence is piling up, and you will want to see every layer. In the comments, drop the word crush if you already suspected the herd was the primary culprit, or tell us what first drew your attention to the bank. Remember that carcass on the bank? The one with the broken leg? It did not drown. It was not bitten. It was pushed. The herd made a decision to surge at that exact moment, and the animal at the edge paid for it with a leg that bent the wrong way, and then the weight of the ones behind her did the rest. You can hear the sound if you listen closely. It is not a scream, exactly. It is a lower sound, a kind of grunt that stops short when the chest is crushed, a punctuation mark at the end of a life that lasted 3 seconds. But here is where the case takes a turn, because the crocodile did not make the kill, and the herd did not make the kill, and yet the count is still climbing. Something else is writing numbers in this ledger, and it has been doing so longer than any crocodile. Follow the current. Downstream of the crossing points, the river narrows between rocky banks, and the dead and the dying are carried there by water that does not care about their struggle. Some of them are already gone when they arrive. Some are still fighting, jaws open, lungs burning, legs flailing against a current that will not release them. And waiting for them, in the shallows where the water runs clear and cold, are the ones you have not been watching, the hippos. It is easy to forget them. They are not in the documentaries, not in the frame with the leaping wildebeest. They sit low in the water, ears and eyes barely breaking the surface, looking like nothing more than rocks that happen to breathe. But they are the most dangerous animals in this river, pound for pound, and they do not tolerate a stampede through their territory. A crocodile attacks to feed. A hippo attacks to remove a threat, and there is no negotiation in that calculation. When a panicked wildebeest is swept into a hippopod, the hippos do not bite the way a crocodile bites. They crush. The jaws of a bull hippo can shear through a body with a force that leaves no doubt about the outcome. The dead are then dragged downstream, and the crocodiles, who would never challenge a full-grown hippo, simply follow the current and feed at leisure. The hippo kills, the crocodile cleans up. The division of labor is almost clinical. And it means the river is not one killer, but a chain of killers, each taking its share at a different stage of the same death. Remember what you assumed when you first arrived, that the crocodiles were the assassins, the hippos were the bystanders, and the herd was the victim. The evidence is already pushing you to a different conclusion, and the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. If you have ever felt that the natural world has been packaged for you, edited into clean, gentle stories where every death has a noble meaning, you know the jolt of standing at a real crime scene. The wind carries the scent of decay and fresh dung. The flies have already found the bodies, and no narrator is going to tell you this was beautiful. It just is. And the truth of it is far more brutal than the postcard ever admitted. That rawness is the evidence you are missing when you watch from a screen. On the bank, you notice the details the documentaries crop out. The tendon hanging from a crocodile's jaw, the flies clustering on an open wound, the way the survivors do not pause to mourn because they cannot afford a single second of stillness. The investigation, you realize, is not about the death. It is about the pattern of death, the way it repeats and shifts and lands on the same victims in the same moments, season after season. And the pattern is telling you something. Look at the age of the bodies. The very young and the very old are overrepresented in the kill count. The young because they cannot keep up, cannot read the river, cannot hold position in the crush. The old because their bodies are already failing, and the crossing asks for a strength they spent long ago. The fittest, the strongest, the most alert. They are the ones who survive. The river is not random in its killing. It is selective, and the selection is brutal in its efficiency. This is where the title of this investigation earns its weight. 1.5 million animals, one river, 3,000 crocodiles. But the numbers only tell you the scale. The mechanism is finer, older, and far less forgiving than any count. Back at the crime scene, the water is still running red. The herd has thinned, and the survivors are climbing the far bank, streaming into the green grass beyond. You would think the worst is over. The evidence says otherwise, because the crossing does not kill once. It kills in phases, and the second phase is just beginning. Watch the bodies that made it to the other side. They stagger, still shaking, water pouring off their flanks. Their muscles tremble with a cold that has nothing to do with temperature. Adrenaline is draining out of them, and what is left is a hollow collapse that leaves them exposed. The predators on the bank know this. The lions have been waiting, not in the water, but in the cover of the trees along the far shore. They do not waste energy chasing healthy prey across open ground. They wait for the ones who have just crossed, who have spent everything in the water, who now stand trembling and blind with fatigue. The first lunging kill happens less than a minute after the survivor reaches solid ground. The lion does not even need to run the animal down. She simply approaches from the side, and the wildebeest, whose legs have turned to water, cannot move fast enough to escape. So the river is not the only checkpoint. It is the first checkpoint, and the ones who clear it enter a second gauntlet where the rules change, and the hunters are faster, quieter, and hungrier than anything in the water. Here is what the studies noticed, and what you would see if you could follow one tagged herd across the entire circuit. The river crossings take a toll that is measurable, but not final. The journey itself takes a toll that is larger. Starvation, exhaustion, predation on the open plains, disease. The crossing is the dramatic peak, but it is not the whole case. The crossing is the dramatic peak, but you just saw that the system kills in slower, quieter ways. Subscribe if you want to keep unpacking the data behind cases like this. In the comments, drop the word you now think accounts for most deaths: starvation, exhaustion, or the second gauntlet. Over 2,500 wildebeest by one count die during the full migration. The river takes its share. The waiting hunters take theirs. The plains take the rest quietly, without spectacle, in the long stretches between one river and the next. The crossing that kills is the crossing you have heard about. The migration that kills, slower and deeper, is the one you are only beginning to understand. And now you are starting to see the shape of the system. 1.5 million animals are not a herd. They are a resource, a river of meat and blood that flows across the savannah, feeding an entire web of predators, scavengers, and cleaners who have evolved to harvest exactly this tide at exactly this moment. But wait, the evidence has another layer, and it is the one the postcards will never show you. Test the water. Wade to the edge where the crossing is shallow, where the dead have piled against a sandbar, and you will find a layer of the river you did not know existed. The bottom is not sand. It is bones, skulls and ribs and the hollow cylinders of long bones, interlocked and packed so densely that you can walk across them without touching the actual riverbed. The crocodiles have been here for generations. The hippos have been here for longer, and the bones they leave behind are not garbage. They are a record, a ledger of every crossing that ever failed, and they tell you that this river has been a killing floor for centuries. The crocodiles are the oldest witnesses. They have not changed in 100 million years because they have not needed to change. Their strategy is the same strategy that worked when the continents were arranged differently. Wait, stay still, explode upward when the target is close, drag it under, and keep it under until the struggle stops. That strategy has a signature. Look at the wounds on a body that has been taken by a crocodile, and you will see puncture marks that match the spacing of its jaws, a pattern you could use to identify the species of attacker even if you had never seen one. The crocodile leaves a receipt. Every crime scene does. The hippo, you will notice, leaves a different signature. Not punctures, but crushing. The bones are broken in a way that could only come from a force measured in tons, and the tooth marks are wide, blunt, almost careless. The hippo does not need to aim. It only needs to close its jaws and let the pressure do the work. And the animals that fall in the crush, that are trampled and suffocated without ever touching a predator, leave no signature at all. Their bodies are simply broken, the internal organs ruptured, the carcass intact on the outside. The autopsy would show no external wound, and yet the cause of death is as clear as any bite mark. 3 killers, 3 signatures, 1 river, and you, the investigator, are learning to read each one. The herd has passed now. The banks are empty. The water is quiet, and the crocodiles have retreated to their deep pools to digest. If you arrived at this moment, you would see nothing but a river flowing through golden grass, serene and picture-perfect. That is the illusion, because the aftermath is where the second crime unfolds, and it is the one that completes the story. The scavengers arrive within minutes. The vultures are first, riding the thermals, folding their wings and dropping onto the carcasses with a brutal efficiency. The marabou storks follow, their bald heads made for reaching into body cavities. The jackals come last, smaller, working the edges, pulling scraps that the bigger feeders have left behind. Watch the vultures work. They do not randomly peck at the dead. They target the soft tissue first, the eyes, the tongue, the belly, and they work in a sequence that is as methodical as any surgeon's. Within hours, a carcass that weighed 400 pounds is converted into bones and scattered scraps, and the nutrients that the wildebeest carried into the river have been transferred into the bodies of the scavengers who live along the shore. Nothing is wasted. Not the dead from the water, not the dead from the bank, not the ones who fall to the lions on the far shore. Every carcass is a resource, and the savannah has built an entire economy around processing those resources faster than they can rot. Now you understand the crossing in full. It is not a massacre, not an accident, not a tragedy. It is a transfer of energy, a passage of nutrients from one form to another, and the crocodiles, the hippos, the lions, the vultures, the jackals, the flies, they are all cogs in the same machine. The wildebeest are the fuel, the river is the intake, and the machine is older than any of the species that feed it. This is the brutal arithmetic of the Serengeti. 1.5 million animals enter the circuit. Over 2,500 do not finish it, and their deaths feed a web of life that would collapse without them. The crossing that kills is also the crossing that sustains. The same river that takes the lives gives the lives to something else. The verdict is not simple, it is not sentimental. It is the verdict of an ecosystem that has no interest in individual survival, and every interest in the survival of the whole, and it reads as follows. The crocodile is not the killer. The hippo is not the killer. The herd is not the killer. The river itself is not the killer. The system is the killer, and it is a system you have been part of from the moment you crossed the river yourself, whether you knew it or not. Do not misunderstand the evidence you have just read. The crocodile is real, its jaws are real, and the wounds it leaves are as precise as any predator's work in nature. But the crocodile is a component, not a cause. It is the bolt that fires when the machine reaches its cycling point, and the machine is the migration itself, the vast wheel of grass and rain and hunger that has been turning across this land since before the first human painted a hunting scene on a cave wall. The individual wildebeest is a victim. The species is not. The migration, for all its death, produces more survivors than casualties, and the pattern of losses is the pattern of a population that is not merely holding steady, but is shaped and strengthened by the very gauntlet that kills its weakest members. You wanted a killer with a name, a single throat to cut. The evidence will not give you one. It gives you something harder to accept, something that feels far less fair. You are the counterweight. Every animal you have watched die. Every body you have counted, every bone you have walked across on that riverbed. All of it is the cost of the grass on the far bank, the green that feeds the herd that will return next season and cross again and feed the same killers again. The system does not judge. It does not mourn. It simply moves, and the movement is the meaning, and the meaning is the survival of a cycle so old that it predates the mammals that run it. So what will you tell yourself now, watching the last stragglers climb the far bank and the grass swallow them whole? You can tell yourself the story of the crocodile, the great ancient hunter, the black-eyed assassin of the shallows. That story is true, but it is incomplete. It is the surface of the evidence, the first file you opened, and it is not the whole case file. Or you can tell yourself the deeper story, the one the bones on the riverbed are still writing. The crossing that kills is not a glitch in the natural order. It is the natural order, revealed in its rawest form, the transfer of life from the many to the few, the conversion of abundance into continuity, the grinding of the whole against the part. When the rain comes again, and the grass greening on the Mara's far bank pulls at the herd's instinct, they will gather on the same shore and stare at the same water. The crocodiles will be in the same deep pools, the hippos will be in the same shallows, and the young wildebeest, born on the journey, will stand at the edge with their mothers and hesitate for a moment before following the rump in front of them into the current. They will hesitate because they know, in a way that has nothing to do with thought, that the water is a door and the door costs lives. They will cross anyway because the grass on the other side is the only life they know how to live, and the cost is part of the price of green. You have the evidence, the bones, the crossing, the door that costs lives. Subscribe, and you will be there when the next herd steps into the current, ready to read the river like a detective. Type "deeper story" in the comments if you will never watch a migration the same way again. That is the case. That is the verdict. That is the crossing, recorded in bone and blood, and the unbroken rhythm of an ancient wheel turning. And the file, as you close it, still has a thread hanging loose, a question that will not settle. Next season the rain will fall somewhere else. The herd will move, and the river will be waiting, and you will know exactly what it means when the first animal steps into the water. You will know because you have read the evidence. You have walked the riverbed. You have counted the bones and weighed the silence. The only question left, the one this case cannot answer, is the one you will carry long after the carcasses are stripped and the river runs clear again. How many more crossings will this land demand? And how many more times will the herd pay the price to reach the grass on the other side? The cycle answers before you can. It always does. The river does not explain itself, and that is the first thing any investigator must accept. You can read every wound, date every bone, map every kill site along 100 kilometers of bank, and the water will still hold a silence that refuses to testify. The crossing is not a secret that can be extracted. It is a fact that can only be witnessed again and again until the pattern becomes as familiar as your own breathing. The crocodile rising, the hippo crushing, the herd surging, the scavengers cleaning. You have seen the whole assembly now, and you have seen that no single part of it is the culprit. Walk the bank one last time before you leave. The mud has hardened in the sun, and the tracks of the herd are baked into it like a record pressed in clay. The flies have thinned, the vultures have moved on to the next feast, and the river is running clear again, as if nothing happened here at all. That clarity is the final deception. Beneath the surface, the bones are still stacked on the riverbed. The crocodiles are still holding their positions in the deep pools, and the grass on the far bank is still green, waiting for the next pulse of hooves to cross and pay the toll. You have read the evidence. You have weighed the signatures and named the mechanism, and what you have learned is not a single killer but a system, one that has been running so long that it has become indistinguishable from the landscape itself. The crossing does not need your judgment. It does not need your grief. It needs only the rain, and the rain will come, and the wheel will turn, and the river will take its share of the 1.5 million who arrive at its banks. That is the case. That is the resolution. And it closes not with a verdict, but with a simple recognition. This river has always been the crossing that kills, and it will always be the crossing that feeds, and the two are the same act, forever inseparable. The evidence is gathered, the file is closed, and the river, as it has done for longer than memory, simply continues. The heat of the day bends the air above the exposed mud, and the last of the moisture steams away from the cracked surface. You stand where the herd stood, and you feel the strange stillness of a crime scene after the crowds have gone. The evidence sits heavier than it did this morning. The puncture marks on the riverbank, the wide crush of the hippo jaws, the absence of any single wound that explains the fallen. You have read them all, and you have learned that reading is not the same as solving. There is no confession here. The river does not confess. The crocodile does not confess. The herd does not confess. They simply are what they are, and what they are is a system that has no need for your understanding, only your witness. You have done the work of the investigator. You have walked the bank, counted the bones, weighed the silence that hangs over the water like a held breath. The verdict is not a name. It is not a single claw or a single set of jaws. The verdict is the pattern itself, the endless arithmetic of the grass and the rain and the hooves and the deep pools, all of it moving together in a rhythm so old that it has become the shape of the land. When you turn to leave, the sun is dropping behind the far ridge, and the shadows of the trees stretch across the water like dark fingers. The river runs clear and quiet, and you would not know, from the surface, that anything ever died here. But you know. You have read the bone on the riverbed. You have heard the silence that follows a crush, and you carry the pattern with you now, the shape of the wheel, the cost of green, the ancient bargain that every crossing pays. The file closes with a long breath, and the bank empties, and the water keeps its counsel. The 1.5 million will come again when the rain calls, and the river will be ready, and the crossing will happen exactly as it has always happened, with no witness but the sky, and no record but the bones.